Well, we're making us a video here.
Right.
My mentor and friend John Cap.
Let me move over
And
crowd Sarah just a
yeah, we
little
got the
bit.
bird dog in the way
Got
here.
the bird dog in the way.
Look, it has bright film on its own. Oh, that's the rug down there.
Yeah.
I'll pull the rug back. Well, hi. I'm here with Dr. Cap. I'm gonna try to get back where I'm level with him. Sorry, you okay with that?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm
Good,
good.
good.
Very good. Crowd
I wanted to get Dr. Cap on tape to tell me a little bit about his life. We're not going to go through the whole thing because he's just not ready for it yet. But I went up and trained with him in neurosurgery at Jackson, Mississippi, and then went to Buffalo and did a neuro-oncology fellowship doing intra-arterial chemotherapy. He's the first one I know of that applied a good dose adjustment based on the number of intracranial vessels, the anterior, middle, and posterior cerebral. And he'd even go in and clip parts of the circle of Willis to where one carotid would infuse the entire tumor bed in the surrounding brain. But that was what I was real impressed with, and you had suggested I try and figure out a way to calculate a good, more accurate, mathematically correct dosing regimen. And I did finally figure it out, and UCLA tried using it later, years later. Tim Closey at UCLA. But why don't we just start back with some of your earlier experiences in life that were kind of interesting. I know you did a lot of hyperbaric work with the Navy down in Panama City, and you did a cerebral embolectomy, middle cerebral artery, from some kid in Vietnam that had a piece of shrapnel go from his heart or somewhere up into his brain and cause a stroke, and did an emergency embolectomy, taking the shrapnel out of the MCA.
I did. I remember doing it.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. And then you wrote the only book I've ever seen on cerebral venous diseases. That's a collector's item.
That's the only one that's been written.
That's the only one that's been written. That's the damn truth.
I think so.
Yeah, but you also taught me how to operate on a carotid in a kind of a Duke type way, straight out of Guy Odom. You said use the sharp dissection. Who was it?
That wasn't Guy Odom. That was Barnes Woodall.
Whoa, Barnes Woodall is a senior to Guy Odom, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, Barnes Woodall. Nowhere else did I see that. We'd take a 15 blade and dissect right down through along the anterior sternocleidomastoid down to the carotid sheath and get the carotid exposed. And of course, we did a couple of hundred of those with the 67 patients I knew about with intracarotid BCNU and cisplatin.
Yeah.
With your specially patented and designed supraophthalmic catheter
that would make the curve.
It would be flow directed by squirting into it. And you had solved the streaming problem before the people that, maybe start wondering why the powers that be don't know what they're doing. Shapiro did the only phase 3 study of intracarotid chemotherapy for brain tumors and declared it a failure, but he did everything wrong. He didn't take into account streaming. They were using an IV pump, which Ed Oldfield and the NIH group had half a dozen different papers with plexiglass models, animal models, all sorts of different ways to show that you get streaming if you don't fill the artery up.
Yeah, you can see it.
And you can see it just like the Mississippi River and the Ohio River flowing together. You can see the Mississippi water and the Ohio water, different colors 3 miles downstream. They hadn't mixed.
Yeah.
And you would mix it, but what are some of the more interesting things that you'd actually done in your life, in and out of neurosurgery?
That's a tough question.
That is. That's unprepared too.
I don't know.
Off the bat, but I mentioned some of the highlights I knew of.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just knew you were a leg up on the hyperbaric oxygen. And that is currently a fad for prolonging your life. And I thought Michael Jackson was just off his rocker getting in the hyperbaric chamber, because most of what I knew about it was it's oxidation. On one hand, we have antioxidants. Everybody wants antioxidants. And on the other hand, you're taking hyperbaric oxygen that's going to oxidize everything. In my opinion, most of these things regarding you need a balance. You've got to have a balance of the right amount.
That's right.
I've seen a person that I think you might have put in a chamber that came in with an MCA stroke, or somebody else, but in the emergency room at UMC, 42-year-old gentleman that had an MCA stroke, was aphasic and right hemiplegic. He went into the hyperbaric oxygen chamber and he could count and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We didn't have endovascular embolectomies at the time. We didn't even have a protocol for using TPA back in the 80s. But we had a glimmer that there were things we could do to save brain while we were getting the operating room or the angiography suite ready. Do you remember doing any of those hyperbaric things, or what were you doing?
We did some hyperbaric things. We kind of used it to see if there was an irreversible infarct. You know.
Oh, yeah, for diagnosis. But we also tried to use it, which it didn't work on the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah,
It was purported to break the blood-brain barrier. The one thing you could break the blood-brain barrier with reliably was a bunch of hypertonic mannitol.
Mm-hmm.
There are other things that you can do to break the blood-brain barrier, but hyperbaric oxygen wasn't one of them. And we talked about using it for brainstem swelling. But you did some studies with the Navy down there in Panama City in a chamber, in one of those 300-foot towers, I'd heard. I don't know.
I don't remember.
I just knew they had a tower down there.
Yeah, they had a tower.
I thought you had some papers with that. Mm-hmm.
Had a paper or two with the Navy, I think, but I can't remember what they were.
But you were Army in Vietnam.
I was Army in Vietnam, yeah.
Yeah, I know you said that. Was it Jake Mathis came to replace you, or you came to replace him?
I think I came to replace him.
Yeah, he worked in Jackson for a little while. But I don't know. Who else? There was a chairman, Harold Young at Richmond.
Yeah, he was.
Harold Young was at Richmond. And Doug Lasky, who actually did most of the heavy lifting on the paper I got to be the first author on, having started the research. But Doug Lasky did most of the heavy lifting, was his resident. And Doug came to work with me when I was working on another form of regional chemotherapy, direct parenchymal infusion. And we got a patent on it. I was one of the co-patent holders and really kind of the lead author on the first paper that came out, which, like, again, as I said, Doug Lasky did most of the heavy writing lifting. I did the protocol writing and the research start and started the whole ball rolling. But according to Stigler's law, anybody that has something named after him credited with it was not the one that first invented it or did not come up with the idea. And that's true in everything. I have 150 papers on people that were spritzing chemotherapy in. There were a lot of people that tried to figure out how to fly an airplane before the Wright brothers.
Right.
They just weren't successful, and it took a lot of effort. But Harold Young had been in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And Harold, as 91, when I was at Washington, D.C. in the NIH, had a pair of tennis shoes that he wore. And Doug told me this story, that he was in a rocket attack while he was doing a craniotomy in the operating room, and he and the patient were the only two that survived. Killed all the nurses and the anesthesiologist, and he was wearing these tennis shoes. And forevermore, that was the tennis shoes he wore in the operating room.
He said
I don't know if it's true or not, but my reference is Doug Lasky.
First I heard.
Yeah, but that's an interesting thing because there were some weird things about that experiences people had over there.
Yeah. It was real, I tell you that.
Yeah, I would say so.
It was real.
Yeah, but then went on and have a long life as a cattle farmer and country squire here in Virginia, the Highlands of Virginia.
There you go.
Yeah,
Oh,
and bird dogs.
Bird dog.
Is Liz one of your puppies, or did you buy Liz?
No, she's
That's Sarah.
Sarah.
I know that, but I'm saying, was
Well,
Liz this third generation or second generation?
Liz was a son, but Liz one I bought.
Oh, Liz too, her mother.
Liz too.
Was first generation, born here.
Born here, first generation.
I remember when you were going to Italy and investigating the Piedmontese with the myostatin deficient gene, and then after a few years, you figured out that there weren't many around because they're very difficult.
I was losing too much money on that.
Yeah.
Every idea doesn't work.
Well, you got to get up and keep trying.
Got it, but persistence is the secret of success.
Yeah.
And you got to keep
trying. Oh, yeah. You had, how long have you had that place, that 2 lots you bought in Costa Rica? Because
5 or Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, you and Larice were on a vacation down there.
Yeah.
You weren't looking buying lots then, were you?
When we bought those lots. Yeah. I was looking
That
at-
was when you bought the lots.
I was about, one when she died.
Oh yeah, but you bought them
I bought
on an
'em
earlier trip.
Before that, I bought them on an earlier trip.
Well, that's been a while.
That's
then.
been a while.
Was that
It's been
2014 when you went down there and she died?
2013, I think.
Yeah, so I didn't know you had lots in Costa Rica back before Larice died. That's been there a while.
Yeah, it's been there a while.
Yeah, yeah. But it's fun and we enjoy visiting. And Dr. Cap is my intellectual mentor and friend, and we always kind of enjoyed each other's intellectual company.
Really.
Yeah,
I appreciate you stopping by. So
yeah.
catch
It's
up
a
on
joy.
everything.
Oh yeah, find out how things are going.
Yeah.
On my way to see my partner's son get married in D.C.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I do have a book that I hope gets to you eventually if it doesn't get hung up at Alex Solomon's. It's about an ophthalmologist from Hattiesburg that went to Vietnam as a flight surgeon for, when he was a kid. And he wrote a book about it that's quite interesting and easy to read. Very easy read, but Lou liked it so much, my partner, he mailed it down to Rob Harris, who was a Navy neurosurgeon. I guess a lot of Army neurosurgeons didn't know Navy neurosurgeons. You weren't really careered. You got out when you could.
I got out the minute I could.
That's right. That's the way it goes. Well, let me see how this sounded. Because that's all we need is something. Because Paul and Camille would certainly like to hear and see this kind of stuff sometime at some point.
At some point, yeah.
At some point.